About what is the React component in this video. So component is pretty much like a core element of the whole React library. So you can treat that like a heart, right? So component is the main piece that is responsible for to display anything on the page. Everything is considered as a component, right? In general, component you can treat that like a function. So that is how that concept is also built upon. It's built upon function concept. So what do we usually do with a function? What is function actually? Function is something it does a chunk of task. The function can take arguments and then it returns some value, right? That is the core basic definition of function. So pretty much like that, component is a function and that can take some values. So in this case, we call them as like props, and then component can act upon those props and then you can do some calculations, whatever, right? And component eventually returns UI element. So that element is combination of, it can have JavaScript code and combination of HTML, right? That is a core UI element it can return. That's what that gets displayed on the page, right? So let's talk about that concept and see how we can implement a core element of component, and then we can talk about how a component can compose other components, right? And how we can separate the logic between the component itself. So, and also the main idea is the component, you can treat that like a self-contained element that is just concerned about what it is responsible for. So let's say if you have if you're displaying something on the page, there's some area, some division, right? That division takes care of displaying some text, and then it has some button in it, right? All that stuff can be taken care by one component, and that component is not aware of any other things that's going on the whole page. So when you're developing these kind of components, each component can be developed by a self-contained team or the developer, right? It has all the logic in it that is just responsible for that component, and that component can be reused anywhere. We can just plug in. So that is the beauty of components. Okay, so let's get to it. We have this main file, index.js. This is where we are rendering the app component. All right. So for now, let's understand. Okay, component is something that displays the UI piece of it, right? Right now we are calling app the component like pretty much like a tags, right? That is also one of the beauty of components. React made it like they introduced concept of called JSX. You have JSX and XML together. We are rendering them like HTML elements, tags, right? So now app, is that returning anything? No, it is empty. That's why I'm running this server here. It is empty page. So let's implement the concept of component. Now what I said, it's a function, right? Blindly write a function, and then I said it's going to return some UI element, right? Okay, UI, let's say you're gonna put some div and then hey, right? So we return the UI element. Now what's the next step? We need to export this function so this file can import it. It is already importing it. That's why it is failing here, because it is not exported here and it's trying to import and it's failing. So let's export that default and then app, right? I exported that and now it displayed. So the whole point is this component, whatever it is returning, that gets the UI piece that gets displayed on the page. That's what happened. So they're just a piece of component. Now you can put any logic here. The other components for that, for those, it doesn't matter, right? It contained all the self-contained logic. So let's say if this app component is going to use other kind of components. For instance, let's say you have home component, right? That's responsible to display the text on the home page, right? Instead of writing the whole thing here in the app, because in the whole app can contain many other components, so we can separate the logic. So what we are calling that as a home component, right? Let's create a new file here, and then we call home.jsx, home.jsx, and then it is also a function, right? It's pretty much, it's a functional component. So we define function and then return, let's say you wanted to return some display button on the home page, right? Click me, right? And then export this, export default home. So we created home component. So in app.js, instead of returning the core HTML element, let's export home, right? See, it got, we can just use home component is defined by some other developer somewhere else, and we don't, app doesn't care about what logic it has. It can just use that like pretty much tag, HTML tag, it can use pretty much like a div, right? Now let's import that. Import home and component.props, we have home here, right? Let's say import home from, that's it. See, now you got the button. So who is rendering this button? It is rendered by home component. And then when you click on this guy, I mean, nothing happens, right? So it doesn't have any logic. But the point is, you can go ahead and put whatever logic you want to put here in the home component. App doesn't care. All it just does is, see how app is so clean now. So likewise, you can have many components underneath, and you can build a beautiful page or beautiful app, right? So this is called composing components. So we are composing multiple components in single function, right? So let's say I wanted to put some logic here. I want to say on click, right? I want to console or alert, let's say on click, we wanted to alert, right? Clicked. So does it matter for the app? It doesn't matter, right? Nothing changed. We're just adding logic to the home component. It just works, right? Because it just returning that. See, it got the alertment. So this is a pretty basic concept of how what it looks like creating a component and putting a logic, and then you can have a lot of things go inside the component itself, right? And then and also the other, what is the other attribute of the function? A function can take arguments, right? So here we're calling them as props. So we'll talk about next video we'll talk about how props can be created and passed along the other components, how they can be leveraged within the component itself. Okay, so we'll catch up in the next video. See you there. Bye.